He doesn't hold on to anger, but his memory is sharp, and it lasts for decades. Mel Brooks, the brilliant mind who created Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, transformed disorder into comedic gold. For over 60 years, he's had people laughing so hard they wept. Yet every joke was backed by careful management, a filmmaker who commanded comedy through exactness and order. During his time making films, Brooks worked with all kinds of performers, the talented, the unusual, and the difficult ones. Some couldn't remember their dialogue, some disregarded his guidance, and others arrived on set thinking they mattered more than the film. For Mel, that was the final straw. When your name ended up on his internal list of people to avoid, it remained there permanently. He never raised his voice, he never stormed off, he just went quiet and removed you from his work. From the producers to Spaceballs, each movie was a statement. Brooks had the power to reshape narratives or delete you from them without any notice. Today, after keeping quiet for so long, Mel Brooks is prepared to share what really happened. He's discussing the broken trust, the difficult situations during filming, and the individuals who almost destroyed his films. 5 performers, all talented, all memorable, but in Mel's mind, they're known for the wrong things. And he's revealing their identities for the first time. Which people made Mel Brooks decide to never work with them again? Who had the talent to succeed, but too much pride to continue? Keep watching, because what comes next might shift how you view some of Hollywood's most celebrated figures. Number 1. Jerry Lewis. Mel Brooks valued brilliance, but he had zero tolerance for superiority. And with Jerry Lewis, he recognized one hidden within the other. Both individuals were creators of comedy, constructors of ridiculous worlds where disorder became logical. Both wrote, directed, and performed in their own concepts. For years, studios imagined bringing them together. It never occurred. Privately, Brooks characterized Lewis as brilliant and draining. He honored the nutty professor. He honored the legacy, the exactness, the creativity, but not the individual behind it. The decisive moment came during the mid-1880s, during initial casting discussions for Life Stinks, Brooks's dark social commentary about a wealthy person required to exist on the streets. Someone proposed Jerry Lewis for the main role. For the studio, it appeared like perfection. 2 comedy icons, 1 work. But for Brooks, it appeared like an impending disaster. The studio had suggested Jerry Lewis's name for a significant supporting character. They argued it would bring distinction, a hint of excellence, but Mel Brooks didn't accept it. "I don't require someone who believes he's more humorous than the movie," he reportedly informed his producer. Brooks understood Lewis's standing, changing dialogue spontaneously, taking over direction, and absorbing all the attention in the space. Brooks wasn't designed to divide authority. Not in the editing room, not on the production floor. They encountered each other just once. A shared friend had organized dinner, expecting compatibility might transform into collaboration. Brooks arrived interested. Lewis showed up behind schedule, then began a continuous 15-minute monologue about the development of American comedy, scarcely acknowledging Mel across the table. Brooks observed, anticipated a moment of understanding that never materialized, and politely left before the final course. Following that evening, the concept was finished. Mel later stated he didn't desire to work together. He desired recognition. And that concluded it. Publicly, both remained polite. No direct criticisms, no disputes, but those close to the situation understood there was no affection, no regard, no feeling of a lost opportunity, simply mutual rejection. Brooks once remarked, "Regarding comedians, I don't select those who believe they're the universe's center. I already have a child." That described him accurately. Mel Brooks created groups, structured disorder, where madness possessed flow, and pride assisted the joke, not the opposite. He allowed talents to stand out, but only if they realized the entire cosmos didn't orbit them. Jerry Lewis couldn't fit within that system. His pride burned too intensely, too independent. Brooks perceived it clearly. Collaborating with Jerry, he stated privately, would have been explosive. Not due to ability, but due to everything else. The alterations, the disruptions, the authority battles. Too noisy, too excessive, too lated. There was never a scene, not even a telephone conversation, not even a genuine proposal. Simply a person Mel Brooks acknowledged from a distance. Because even brilliant minds can be isolated when they begin confusing the production area for a mirror of themselves. Brooks didn't need to speak loudly or create a situation. He simply shut the entrance quietly and permanently.
Number 2. Harvey Korman. On film, Harvey Korman was outstanding. Brooks depended on him for some of the greatest laughs in his work, and Harvey consistently succeeded. Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety, History of the World Part 1, Korman could maintain an absurd expression just long enough to trigger laughter, then release it with flawless accuracy. Yet beneath that excellence, there existed conflict, the type Brooks seldom mentioned. Korman originated from The Carol Burnett Show, where he was the foundation of numerous sketches. He was accustomed to liberty, flexible scripts, spontaneous creation, an environment that adapted to his instincts. But Brooks' sets didn't adapt. They were structured, exact, more like musical arrangements than playgrounds. Each line, each response, each break was part of a greater flow. And when someone strayed too far from the beat, the entire work suffered. Korman, despite all his talent, strayed frequently. Their most significant disagreement occurred during High Anxiety. Brooks had assigned him as Dr. Montague, the arrogant, threatening director of the Psychoneurotic Institute for the Very, Very Nervous. Korman desired to recreate the character. Fresh mannerisms, fresh dialogue, complete rewrites even. Brooks rejected it. "We've already crafted the humorous elements," he informed him. "We simply need you to execute it." Korman responded poorly. The set became strained. He started pausing between attempts, challenging positioning, reconsidering rhythm. Brooks, typically the first to joke or create spontaneously, began ending discussions abruptly. What should have been an effortless, fun production became a sequence of quiet conflicts. Production staff later described it as silent combat. No shouting, no eruptions, simply continuous discussion. During filming, Brooks confided to a producer, "Harvey desires to be the filmmaker, but that's already my position." By the closing week, the two barely communicated. Brooks delivered feedback through his aide. Korman isolated himself between attempts. The chemistry that once energized Blazing Saddles had become rigid and distant. The flow disappeared. The laughter became artificial. The confidence quietly shattered. The work still succeeded. Harvey Korman was simply too skilled to allow the stress to appear. On screen, he was perfect. Rhythm precise, execution flawless. But Mel Brooks never forgot the difficulty required to achieve it. Following High Anxiety, Korman's name silently disappeared from upcoming work. Not from hostility, but from weariness. Brooks would later clarify it in his manner. "Some performers bring happiness to a set. Harvey brought excellence, but it consistently came with opposition. There was no public conflict, no dramatic separation, simply a quiet recognition that they'd progressed as far as possible together." Korman remained satisfied with their work. He discussed Brooks favorably for years, and Brooks, to his honor, never rejected Korman's contribution to his finest films. But the collaboration had ended. The flow had fractured, and Mel Brooks, above all else, constructed his world on flow. He could manage insanity. He could manage difficult personalities, unusual people, complete disorder wearing a disguise. But when partnership became rivalry, when laughter began feeling like warfare, that's where Brooks established boundaries. He didn't care about triumph, he cared about the laugh. And when the laugh required more than it returned, he departed.
Number 3. Chevy Chase, Mel Brooks, possessed an instinct for sensing energy. He could determine before any dialogue was delivered or any scene practiced whether someone fit into his creative world. With Chevy Chase, all his instincts indicated rejection. They never worked together, not even once. And that wasn't accidental, it was intentional. During the 1980s and into the early 90s, Chase's name surfaced repeatedly. Studio leaders insisted strongly. He was famous, a recognized talent, the representation of American comedy with quick intelligence and characteristic blank expression. Yet each time, Brooks rejected the idea. No uncertainty, no discussions, just a calm, firm rejection. Because Mel Brooks didn't select based on celebrity. He selected based on flow, reliability, and manageable chaos. And instinctively, he understood Chevy Chase would never match that pattern. Why? Because Chevy Chase violated the primary principle of Mel Brooks's creative approach. He didn't work cooperatively with others. Brooks had observed this well before any possibility of working together arose, on television programs, in quiet industry accounts, in cautionary words from shared acquaintances. Chevy was clever, quick, and dangerously humorous. He could energize a space, then drain it equally fast. Brooks reportedly informed a casting professional, "He's not performing. He's simply waiting for others to finish speaking so he can demonstrate he's the cleverest person present." But Brooks didn't desire the cleverest individual present. He desired the most giving, someone capable of delivering the punchline while still allowing space for someone else to get the final laugh. That wasn't Chevy. Their closest encounter with collaboration occurred during casting for Spaceballs. Chase's name was suggested for Dark Helmet. He possessed the understated delivery, the expressionless appearance, the appropriate rhythm, but Brooks hardly considered it. He wanted Rick Moranis. "Rick understands when to hold back," Brooks later stated. Chevy only understands how to disrupt. For Brooks, connection mattered more than recognition. Timing was sacred. Pride was unwelcome. Privately, he characterized Chase as someone who destroyed comedy rather than dancing with it. He respected the person's ability, the intuition, the cleverness, but disliked how it came wrapped in detachment. Constantly smirking, constantly removed. Comedy for Brooks wasn't about irony. It involved commitment. Regardless of how ridiculous the joke, you needed to dedicate yourself to it, exist within it, believe it. Chevy didn't. There was one encounter between them, brief, courteous, and instantly unmemorable. It concluded with Mel offering a slight smile and commenting, "Perhaps in a different reality." Chase never entered Mel's world. Years afterward, Brooks alluded to it in a discussion, carefully, thoughtfully, without identifying anyone. "Some performers are so conscious of themselves," he mentioned. "They neglect to be in the moment. You can observe them considering themselves when they should be existing in a scene." The interviewer questioned if he referred to Chevy Chase. Mel simply smiled and continued. For Mel Brooks, connection meant everything. The shared flow, the pauses between dialogue, the unspoken agreement that all good comedy depends on. Trust me, and I'll trust you. But Chevy Chase didn't trust anyone. He wielded silence as a tool, language as sharp instruments, and every interaction needed to conclude with him victorious. Brooks never concerned himself with victory. He valued the group, the equilibrium, movement, rhythm, reliability. Ultimately, Chase wasn't officially excluded. He was simply overlooked, not because he lacked humor, but because he didn't belong. And in Mel Brooks's universe, unconventional people were accepted, provided they comprehended the flow.
But pride masked as self-assurance, that remained outside.
Number 4. Frank Langella. Some performers lose a part, but Langella lost the filmmaker completely. On the surface, he seemed ideal. Brooks was creating Dracula, dead and loving it, and Langella had previously portrayed Dracula on Broadway with great success. Tall, captivating, intensely dramatic, everything appeared correct until it fell apart. He embodied Dracula, at least the solemn interpretation of the character, and that created the issue. Mel Brooks wasn't creating something solemn. He wasn't pursuing gothic seriousness or dramatic intensity filled with candlelit moments. He desired madness, physical comedy, jokes that struck like thunder, a vampire capable of delivering a speech one second and stumbling over a candelabra the next. But Frank Langella entered pre-production as though he were preparing to perform Hamlet again. From the initial day, the approach was incorrect. Practice sessions became slow. Brooks, who typically managed his sets like a precisely coordinated performance, found himself losing momentum. Langella didn't respond to humor. He didn't ad-lib. He delivered his dialogue like holy text, serious, controlled, resistant to spontaneity. He wasn't portraying Dracula, Brooks later mentioned to someone. He was portraying a religious figure. Brooks attempted to redirect him. Comments, hints, careful suggestions. Nothing succeeded. Langella would acknowledge respectfully, then go back to the identical stone-like performance. Stress started accumulating behind the scenes. Brooks required energy, but Langella only provided seriousness. Moments designed to lift off crashed under the heaviness of each dramatic break. The other cast members, experienced comedians and supporting actors, began wavering. Production staff murmured, "Is this supposed to be funny or operatic?" Then the final moment arrived. During a practice reading, Brooks gave Langella a fresh line, a typical Brooks approach. Serious in the beginning, absurd at the finish. Langella paused, hesitated, then questioned plainly, "Do you want me to ridicule the script?" Brooks looked at him briefly and answered, "No, I want you to make it through." That ended it. Within days, Langella was replaced. No arguments, no announcement, no controversy, simply a quiet substitution. Leslie Nielsen stepped in, a different type of Dracula, someone who could remain serious while everything collapsed around him in organized madness. That's what Brooks was after, not heaviness, but precision. Nielsen provided exactly that. Langella couldn't. Officially, the switch was labeled creative disagreements, but everyone involved in the production understood the reality. Mel Brooks wasn't going to force a Shakespearean performer into doing physical comedy. He needed someone who grasped the humor before the punchline arrived. Langella never understood. He departed the production quietly and never discussed it afterward. Brooks, admirably, never spoke negatively about him publicly. But whenever Dracula, dead and loving it, was mentioned in discussions, Brooks described Leslie Nielsen with one word: perfect. Langella's name was never brought up. In Brooks's reality, there were just two types of performers: those who enhanced the chaos and those who were overwhelmed by it. Langella entered wearing royalty, but Mel wasn't creating monarchy. He was creating disorder, and in his universe, you needed to embrace the tumble.
Number 5. Gene Wilder. Sometimes the worst hurt comes from people you're close to. Mel Brooks's most painful experience involved a friend. Gene Wilder was more than just a performer. He was Brooks's artistic counterpart, the inspiration to his creativity. When they worked together, they didn't simply create comedies, they transformed what comedy meant. The producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, each wasn't merely successful, it revolutionized the genre. However, following Young Frankenstein, things changed. Wilder had written much of that movie's screenplay. Brooks had refined it, directed it, and insisted on keeping it in black and white. The outcome was pure magic, an immediate masterpiece. Yet underneath the surface, a divide had started forming. Wilder had a different story he wanted to tell, the adventure of Sherlock Holmes's smarter brother. He'd written it, wanted to direct it himself, and hoped Mel would produce it. Brooks refused. Not because the humor wasn't there, not because it lacked quality, but, as he explained later, Gene believed he was prepared. I understood he wasn't ready yet. Wilder felt rejected by this. He'd anticipated encouragement. Brooks created space between them instead. That space became silence. Wilder moved forward with the movie without Brooks's involvement. The actors seemed familiar,
Marty Feldman, Madeline Kahn, but the magic was missing. The connection they'd shared had weakened. For 4 years, Brooks and Wilder had no contact, no argument, no media attention, simply a peaceful separation. Two people who used to complete each other's sentences now went separate ways. Brooks supposedly mentioned to someone, "It felt like your brother moving away from home, only he took your favorite joke along." They crossed paths again years afterward, unexpectedly at a function neither had intended to go to. No formal words, no expressions of regret, just two former friends in the same space, perhaps briefly recalling how wonderful this shared laughter used to be. There wasn't a dramatic apology or emotional reconciliation, only a handshake, some jokes exchanged, and something resembling friendship once more, though a divide persisted. They never collaborated again after that point, not because of hostility, but due to quiet letdown. Brooks said once that Gene Wilder was the sole actor he completely trusted with his incomplete ideas. He could give Gene a partially developed scene, a character lacking a conclusion, and Wilder would finish it as though he inherently understood its destination. Following Smarter Brother, that confidence never came back. Wilder had left the inner circle, and Mel Brooks, despite all his humor, never permitted anyone to leave twice. In public, they remained friendly, polite, and courteous. But within Brooks's personal world, the one held together by flow, intuition, and faithfulness, Gene Wilder was the person who severed the connection, not through malice, but significantly enough to leave a lasting impression. Because occasionally, the person who understands you most knows precisely where it hurts.
Some performers missed opportunities because they weren't talented enough. But these 5, they possessed the ability. What they missed was confidence, rhythm, modesty, or simply an awareness of the environment they occupied. And with Mel, once that confidence disappeared, there was no returning. You weren't simply removed from the work. You were eliminated from the conversation entirely. Because in Mel Brooks's universe, getting cast wasn't the victory. Staying cast was. And that required something more valuable than talent alone. It required understanding the unwritten rules of his world. Respect the rhythm, trust the process, leave your ego at the door. These 5 actors had the skill, the timing, and the star power that most could only dream of. But they lacked the one thing Mel Brooks valued above all else, the ability to serve the comedy instead of themselves. In Hollywood, being blacklisted usually means scandal, controversy, or public feuds. But with Mel Brooks, it was quieter, more personal. You didn't get banned. You just stopped existing in his universe. No second chances, no explanations, just silence. And in a career that spanned over 6 decades, Brooks proved that the greatest power a director can have isn't the ability to make stars. It's the ability to unmake them, one quiet decision at a time. So now it's your turn. Who else do you think should have made this list? Were there any actors you're surprised didn't work with Mel Brooks? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you found this deep dive into Hollywood's hidden tensions as fascinating as I did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. We're uncovering more untold stories, more behind-the-scenes drama, and more legends who weren't quite as legendary as they seemed. Turn on notifications because, trust me, the next name we reveal might just shock you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.